The unit of study is going to be the Holocaust, and the way I would start the unit would be a discussion of human rights. And I found a good video that has about 8 minutes worth of detailed information about human rights. It starts from the very beginning of time and goes to pretty much current time, and then after that there is about 14 minutes of footage discussing each individual human right, and they're very current. They're almost little commercials, so the kids really like that. Granted, it's not in Spanish or any other language, but the kids can relate to the images and the pictures and things along those lines. Any of the material that is handed out, I would have translated, because right now I cannot do that, but as soon as I feel comfortable doing it, I would do that myself. And obviously, a lot of the material that I'm going to have would take a lot of translation, so I would try to hit the key points for the students. The next thing I would talk about in the progression towards the Holocaust would be a movie about genocide. This movie discusses all the genocides, all the way up until the recent ones with the Hutu and the Kuti in Africa, and this is really good because it's only 23 minutes, so the students can view it the whole period, and it also comes with a worksheet that makes them really pay attention to genocide, the movie, and just makes them think as well. After that, we would watch the movie, and we would also have a good discussion about it. It has seemed to work in the past. The next thing we would do would be a handout to discuss the Nazi rise to power. This is where we would begin to get into the Holocaust itself, and this is really good. It's rather long. It's from a book. It's called The Nazi Rise to Power, and it has pictures and it has a lot of information in here about the Nazi Party, Hitler's rise to power, and things along those lines. This is really good. This is something that I would try to get almost completely translated into Spanish if possible, or whatever language that I am teaching, and we would read through this together. And this would probably take about 2 or 3 class periods with discussion afterwards and homeworks of reflections on how you felt and different questions along those lines. Some critical thinking questions. Along with that, probably on the 3rd day or the 4th day after we've read through the whole thing, I would start using visual literature, and I will have them look at Nazi propaganda to see how they depicted the Jews, and we would talk about these pictures. This is one picture of Nazi propaganda where it has a sign about the Jews and it discusses it down here, and then we would just do visual literacy and I'd ask them what they saw and have them discuss it. We would also go through the definition of anti-Semitism, just because they need that little bit of a background knowledge when discussing the Holocaust. These are very good visual literacy components because they depict the Jews in a lot of bad ideas, and the students are able to figure them out because they're very blatant and obvious. We would spend a lot of time on this. I mean, this activity would probably be either a day or 2, just because a lot of students can have their own opinions, and this can lead to very good discussion. Then I would have this handout. After they saw the propaganda and how people were looking at Jews, this book is talking about the Holocaust, but it's also the state of terror of Germany for 6 years. And this is it also shows other ways of how Hitler and the Nazis figured out who was a Jew and things along those lines. They had pictures, and I wouldn't use this whole thing because it goes into a lot more detail for this stage of the unit, but this is very good to still build some background knowledge. And then there's a poster that I have found that shows the racial laws that the Germans used to depict a Jew, and it breaks it down all the way to a Michelin, and to basically every person could somehow be found to be a Jew with their ancestors if they really wanted to find them. And that's one of the big ideas here, is the bullying and the anti-Semitism, and basically the Nazis doing whatever they wanted to whoever they want. The next thing we will talk about Kristallnacht. And Kristallnacht it's called the Night of the Broken Glass, and I have another handout that would be fantastic if I could get this translated into whatever language I'm teaching. It talks about how it happened, why it happened, and who were the main culprits and what happened after it. So this here is when we really start getting into how the Jews are being treated. After Kristallnacht, a lot of the Jews weren't able to, but they were forced to wear stars and different kinds of stars. They all had to wear the yellow star to say that they were a Jew. And I have another handout, or something I can put under a document camera, that kind of tells you why it was a yellow star, and showing throughout history the significance. And then some pictures of different kinds of stars, which we'll get into in a little bit, as well as Jewish prisoners wearing it. And when I say Jewish prisoners, they were forced to wear them in the ghettos as well as in concentration camps and death camps, but they also wore them before they were put into those areas. And you can see that here in this picture. So a lot more visual literacy, especially if I can't teach a lot of this in their language, so that will help them learn and see the material. Next, we're going to talk about the ghettos. And right now we're probably about a week or so into the unit. The ghettos are important because it happened after Kristallnacht. That was when they first began coming around. And I have another really good book about the anatomy of a ghetto. And I would love to get this translated completely into Spanish or whatever language, because it shows maps of ghettos, it talks about people in the ghettos, and it shows people in the ghettos, and they're all wearing their stars. Once they were in the ghettos, a lot of them were transported to death camps. But before they were transported to death camps, there was some resistance in the ghettos and throughout the Holocaust in general. So I would talk about the resistance with another book with visual literacy, and I would focus on the resistance inside the ghettos right now, because that's where a lot of the stuff was happening. There were other resistance forces happening throughout Europe, but since we're kind of focusing on the ghettos right now, I would just really focus this material on the resistance inside the ghettos. So once the Jewish people in the ghettos were taken away, they were taken away to death camps. And once they were taken to death camps, they were made to wear different stars. And they weren't really called stars at this time, they were talking about badges. And I would show them an example that I have of the badges for the different types of people: the political prisoner, a criminal, a homosexual, an immigrant, a Jehovah's Witness. And then if they were Jewish on top of that, they'd have to wear the yellow star behind it. So this is the way that they were forced to wear these stars and these badges, and just seeing it will give the students a better understanding. This is from Dachau, I think is how you pronounce it, the death camp here. So after working through all this, now we're looking at probably about 2 weeks worth of lessons. We would then get back into a video that kind of wraps up the whole thing and the harsh treatment of the Jewish people during the Holocaust, and it's called The Holocaust of History. This is pretty graphic, and you would definitely need to have a permission slip for this. After watching that, what I would do, I know students like to be read to, and in the Holocaust of History, it discusses how they were liberated and what happened right after they were liberated. But then I would pick a couple diaries that young writers during the Holocaust did that were found afterwards. And it's from the book called Salvage Pages. And I may copy some of these for them, or I would just read them to them as a kind of culminating activity with it. So this would be a nice, not nice, you really can't say nice during the Holocaust, but this would be a good way to discuss what young people around their age felt and did to keep the message alive. After I read it, there's another video. This is approximately 48 minutes, and it's called I'm Still Here, and it's real diaries read by famous people, and it was created by MTV, and the students can really get with this and understand it because it's some popular songs and things like that, and they can watch this in one period, and they're actual diaries, kind of like from this book, but instead of the teacher reading it or them reading it, it's set to music, and it is with famous people reading the diaries. And there's obviously images and things like that, so the visual learning is part of it, and the auditory learning as well. To wrap up everything, we would definitely take them to the Holocaust Museum and spend the whole day there. The Holocaust Museum's in Skokie, and they would get a more in-depth view than what I could give them. They could also start watching a movie called The Holocaust. It was made in the 70s, and it's got Meryl Streep. The only problem with this movie is it's 7 hours long, and it will take up a lot of time. Obviously, you wouldn't want to keep watching this for what would break down to be like 2 or 3 weeks worth of classes. But if you find some free time, you can watch it, and everything that they've learned is put into this movie with real life people, and the students seem to really like this. It's not a documentary, it's not anything that they can't watch, and they really see people, true people, going through everything. And some of the characters, the names, are somewhat similar to the stuff that we would have read or learned, and I think they can make that connection. But the big culminating activity would be going to the Holocaust Museum, and the students would learn that way. I would focus mainly on visual learning, auditory learning, just because if I am not teaching in their L1 as much as I would like to begin with, that way they would at least see and hear, maybe not in their L1, but they would see the visuals and build some background knowledge for when they would go to the Holocaust Museum. They'd get a better understanding of everything.